Oh, I'm now live. So, hello, hello, hello. Greetings, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining me on the planet. My name is June Allen, and I am the founder of The Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. So, I'm a trauma therapist, I'm a business coach, I'm a retreat facilitator, I'm a hopefully soon to be author. I keep saying it because I need to finish the book. Um, yeah, and I'm really grateful today. I'm really grateful today. And today I want to talk to you about being your best self. Okay, I want to keep it really simple today. I want to talk to you about being your best self. And I love the reason why I wanted to talk about it as well is because at this time of year, we're going into the autumn, we're going to be going into the kind of holiday season soon, all of that kind of stuff. And sometimes with the change in the seasons and with the holidays around the corner, it can be hard to kind of stay grounded in being your best self. Okay, because of all of the expectations and because it's getting colder and maybe you don't want to leave your house, and there are so many different things that can have so many external things that can have an impact on us internally. So I really wanted to talk to you about this today because I feel like this might help you do the transition in a much more gentle way. Hi, thanks for joining. This might help you do the transition, whether it's transitioning into autumn or transitioning into the holiday season, as a reminder for you to just kind of, to stay grounded in being your best self. Okay. But before I get into that, I'm just going to give you a little bit of housekeeping. So today's live stream is also inspired by the stuff that I've been doing in my North Star Business School. I absolutely love doing the stuff in my business school. It's for therapists, whether they're newly qualified or experienced. And basically the course is about, or the coaching program is about helping you to set up your private practice or to revamp your private practice if you're already qualified already. You've already got private practice. So yeah, so it's inspired by that. And so if you're a business owner, if you're a therapist or a coach, and you need some support in learning how to set up your private practice, it's intercultural, it is trauma informed. There's so many different elements to it. I'm bringing in, it's a holistic experience. It's not just about the practical side of things, about how do you set up with HMRC and how do you do all the back ends, how do you set up your back office. It's not just all of that, it's all of the emotional stuff that comes with it. It's dealing with the fear of failure, it's dealing with any shame that you might have, it's dealing with fear of being visible. So it really, that stuff kind of works in alignment with each other. And I encourage the ladies in the group to really think about what's happening for them in their body, well, not just what's happening in their mind, but what comes up for them as we're talking about all these different things and looking at the patterns from the past, whether they're inherited from family or from society, and looking at how that stuff shows up in the present. So yeah, so if you're interested in joining me for the next stage of the business school, there's a, if people joined in October, when I first did the self-care, we're working through the self-care for success module now. You can't join that one now, it's too late now to join that one, but you can also join the next session, which is happening on the 29th of November, and that one's going to be all about foundations and money moves. So we're going to be looking at how to set up all of the practical things. We're going to be looking at financial therapy, we're going to be looking at how to set up your back office and all of that kind of stuff. So if your back office is a bit raggedy and you've got issues around money, you're afraid of success, you want to look at your money trauma and all of that sort of stuff, then this course is really going to be for you. So if you're interested in doing, it's a 9-week course over 9 sessions. Over the winter term, you can click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. So if you've got any questions or anything about it, you can DM me, send me an email, info@theartofgreatness.com. But there's loads of information on my website. So if anything that you want to ask, you're probably going to find it on the website anyway. So yeah, so that's kind of the bit of housekeeping that I really wanted to talk about. So yeah, let's dive into the content. So yeah, so today I wanted to talk about being your best self and the importance of being your best self. So the first one, okay, is raise your standards. Okay, the first thing about being your best self is raise your standards. Okay, if you're in situations where you're not being empowered, okay, if you tend to spend your time with a lot of people that just want to gossip and chat about other people's business, okay, that's not you being your higher self. That's not you living in your sacred self. Okay, that's you living in other people's business. It's not going to help you grow. It's not going to help you grow. Okay, it's about you deciding for yourself. And if you don't know what your values are, give yourself some time, create some space to be able to think about, actually, well, what are my values? What are my values? I think sometimes it's very easy for us to just inherit the same values that our parents had, and we don't really question, actually, are these values my values? That was actually quite a revelation for me when I started doing my healing work. Really giving myself permission to go, okay, well, my parents had this religion, my parents had these values, my parents had these thoughts and feelings about these different things. Do they actually, are they actually applicable to me? Do I actually want those things? And there was a few things that I thought were good, but there was some stuff that I took off the list because they were, and it doesn't mean that I was judging my parents for having those things. That's what they chose to do, and they obviously have their own, they have their own right to have their own set of values and principles and stuff like that. But I had to make sure that those things really worked for me. I had to make sure that the values that I want to live by are in alignment with what works for me and not for anybody else. So that's something else for you to think about when you're raising your standards. Are you operating from standards that belong to somebody else? Or do they actually belong to you? Have you just accepted those values because your family think it, or because your friends think it, or because your community think it? Are they actually in line with what you feel about life? Are they actually in alignment with what you want to do? Are they in alignment with your work? This stuff is, if you want to be your higher self, you have to really sit and think and pause and reflect on these sort of things, because sometimes as well we can be in job, and I know I've done it as well. I've worked in jobs and stuff like that. Obviously we need to be responsible and pay our bills and stuff like that, but I knew that I couldn't stay in those jobs because I didn't feel fulfilled. I didn't feel that I was doing anything that was really contributing to society. I wasn't doing anything that I felt was really nourishing myself or the places where I worked. I was just turning up and just getting on with it. And obviously to a certain extent there is a place for that, like I said, because you need to pay your bills, you need to be responsible. But at the same time, there is also something to be said for looking into the future and go, okay, if this is not working for me now, if I don't feel like I'm operating from my best self, what would that look like? How can I plant seeds in the future for me to be able to raise my standards? What does raising your standards even look like? And it can be like I said, it can be your circle of friends, it can be what what you're doing in terms of work, it can be how you parent, it can be how you show up for yourself, how you care for yourself. Raise your standards. Stop putting up with shit. Stop putting up with shitty people. Stop putting up with shitty things. The clothes that you've got in your wardrobe that have got holes in or don't fit you no more, get rid of them. Get rid of them, because you're holding on to all of these things that don't work for you no more. You're holding on to something. You're holding on to things that are not your current reality. And when you're holding on to stuff that doesn't work for you anymore, you're just gonna end up feeling bad about yourself. Raising your standards means being clear and being honest with yourself about what is happening for you in the now, not what's happening in the past. Not what's happened in the past. Okay? You use your past as an anchor to help you move forward. You take the lessons from your past to go, okay, that did not work for me. These people, places, or things did not work for me. I'm going to raise my standards and I'm going to do ABC instead of what XYZ that I was doing last week or whatever last month. Raise your standards. Okay? Raise your standards. The next one is about sharing from your heart. Okay, share from your heart. Sometimes a lot of us are afraid to say what we think and say what we feel because we're afraid of what other people are going to say. Yeah? Sometimes we want to hold on to things and we don't want to say things that we really feel, because maybe in the past you've been rejected by people for saying what you think and feel. Okay, so Kisami's saying, Kisani is saying, so true, holding on to things that are no longer sure. Sure, our purpose stagnates. Absolutely. If you're not conscious of it, you need to make time to sit down and think so you can start to take action on it. You know, this stuff is really, really important. And this is also connected to the sharing from your heart thing as well, because you can't share from your heart if you're not connected to it. Okay, you can't share from your heart if you're not connected to it. And a lot of us are disconnected from our heart because of environments, you know, people that we've grown up around. You know, maybe sharing from our heart, sharing our true selves has not been safe. You know, sharing from our true selves has not been safe. So we've had to kind of put on a mask and assimilate and do all these people pleasing stuff, because that's all we know. That's all we understand. But when we do that, when we exile these parts of ourselves that really want to speak truth, what is that doing? What does that do to your sense of self? What does it do to your self-esteem? You end up with a narrative that you're not good enough, that who you are is not good enough, that how you speak is not good enough, that your values and your needs are not good enough. This is the narrative that we end up internalizing, and that's how we end up. You know, we end up making decisions based on what we think other people want. And some of us have lived a life like that, and it closes down the heart. It closes down the heart when you do that, because you're not living from your full self. You know, you're not living from your full self. And when you're not living from your full self, it's very hard for you to be at peace. So in order for you to share from your heart, maybe it's not something that you're going to do overnight. It's going to take time. If it's a pattern that you've been doing, is to not sharing your true self, is to ask yourself first, you know, why is it that I find it difficult to share myself? Why is it so difficult for me to share who I am? What's happened to me that shut me down? And as black people, this is something that, you know, that we've used as a survival behavior as part of living under the system. Living under the system, we're not supposed to speak up. As black women, we're supposed to keep our mouths closed, and we're supposed to keep our hands busy. Yeah, as black women, we're supposed to be keeping busy and keeping our mouths closed. So a lot of us don't know how to speak up. We don't know what our needs are. We don't know how to share from the heart, because we're so used to being mules. We're so used to being used by other people that we don't know what it means to truly be ourselves. We don't know what it means to actually really share honestly from the heart, because there's so many external things that are telling us that we're not allowed. So ask yourself those questions. Ask yourself those questions. What is it, you know, what does it mean for you to share from the heart? Why is it that my heart feels so closed down? What other have been the benchmarks in my life in the past that have told me that speaking up for myself and sharing from the heart is not safe? And begin to find some spaces that are safe. Make it a priority to start to find people, places and things that are going to help you to start to show up as your true self and to share from your heart. You know, this is really important. And this is kind of linked to number 3, actually. Begin to take actions and make choices that are in alignment from your sacred self, not your wounded self. And this is something that I had to learn over time. And I was talking to the women in my business school yesterday about this. The module that we were talking about yesterday was all about, you know, what is racial wellness for therapists? What does it look like? And I was sharing different tools with them about how they can begin to really take care of themselves. And one of the tools that I shared with them is understanding your inner world, exploring your inner world. The fact that we all have a core sacred self, and there are other parts of us that, you know, that come into play. Also, depending on our histories, depending on our childhood, all of that kind of stuff, there are different parts of ourselves that interact with each other. There's the core self, which is the sacred part, of yourself, the part of us that's connected to the universe, the part of us that connects us to each other. That's your sacred part, your sacred self. And then what often happens is, there's an inner child, there's an inner teenager, and there's all these other parts, often wounded parts. There might be an angry teenager. There might be a part that there's a workaholic. There's a part that's an addict. That's trying to, in a way, even though the addict part can be quite self-destructive, is also the part that's trying to self-soothe. It's a part that's trying to stay in control. So it's not about demonizing those parts that act out, but it's about understanding what are these different parts of ourselves trying to teach us. What are these different parts trying to tell us about our needs? What are these different parts trying to tell us about what areas and people in our lives feel safe or not safe? So it's really being conscious again and slowing down and thinking about, okay, if I'm operating from my sacred self, if I'm operating from the sacred, universal, holy, the sacred part of yourself, if I'm operating from that part of myself, what decisions would I be making? How would I be talking? What choices would I make? What would I be doing for work? Who would I be in relationship with? Who would be in my inner circle? How would you parent? What sort of books would you be reading? How would you nourish yourself? What would you be eating? If you were operating from your sacred self, these questions are really quite powerful to think about. Okay, well, I know I'm not operating in alignment with my sacred self because I'm doing X, Y, and Z that don't make me feel good. I'm in these relationships, I'm in these circles, I'm with these people, doing all of these things that don't really serve me. But I'm sort of in these situations, I'm in these circles because I don't know how to be any other way. And it's time to start thinking about all of those things. Because time is ticking. Time is ticking. And being your best self is not something that you have to kind of look at in the future. Being your best self is something that you can own right now. You can make a decision about who you want to be. You can make a decision about what you want to be. But it really does start with the relationship that you have with yourself. Because when you start with the relationship that you have with yourself, that's going to have an impact on the relationship that you have with others. So think about that first and foremost. Yes, you can look at your inner circle and all the rest of it, but really, you really want to start with your inner world. And this is why I started having this conversation with the ladies in my business school. Because I want them to first understand the relationship that they have with themselves, and to really look at all of those parts, the inner parts in their inner world, and how they react with each other, how they respond to each other, and how they behave, and be honest about how those things behave. Some of the more wounded parts might have more fear. They might feel ashamed about doing certain things, and all of these things are going to show up in business. All of these things are going to show up as how they show up as business owners. If there's not an awareness around those different parts, sometimes what can happen is, and I've seen this happen in so many different clients, is that there are parts of themselves where people feel so ashamed and so upset and so angry with different parts of themselves. Maybe there's things that they've done that they're ashamed of. Maybe they've been in situations where other people have shamed them or abused them, so they've internalized that shame, and the person finds it really hard to accept certain parts of themselves, and so they exile them. They abandon those parts of themselves. They can't communicate with those parts of themselves. They can't love those parts of themselves. But guess what happens? Those parts don't just go away just because that person doesn't like it. Those parts will leak out, and they'll show up in other areas of your life. They'll show up in your relationships. They'll show up in how you show up at work. If you're a business owner, they'll show up how you interact with your clients. There's no getting away from it. So an important part of being your best self, okay, is to start to change the relationship that you have with even the parts that you don't like. Is reframing the relationship that you have with those parts so you can begin to love all of you. Being your best self doesn't mean that you just, you're quite happy to love the parts that are good and that help you do well at work, and that when you feel good about yourself. Being your best self is all about loving the parts of you that you find really difficult. It's about changing the relationship and actually looking at those parts. And often they're younger parts of ourselves. They're younger parts. Often it's parts of us that were really hurt quite really badly in childhood. These are the parts of us that were hurt really badly in childhood. That sometimes we just feel, and there will be parts of us that will protect those wounded parts because we don't want to be hurt anymore. We don't want to hurt anymore. I'm so glad this is making so much sense to you. We don't want to be hurt anymore. Those younger parts don't want to be hurt anymore. So we built, there's other parts of us that will build walls that will protect those vulnerable parts of us that weren't heard, that weren't seen, that weren't loved, that weren't cared for. An important part of being your best self, your higher self, your sacred self, is to bring that sacred part of you to the forefront. Allow the sacred part of you to drive the bus. Okay, and that sacred part of you can also be the way that I sometimes explain it to my clients as well. It's having an inner mother energy and inner father energy. An inner mother energy is nurturing, loving, patient, compassionate, and then there's the inner father energy, which is more about boundaries and setting limits. That's the part of you that's going to say no to people. That's the part of you that is going to take action on certain things. That's the part of you that will show up and be the entrepreneur. And so when you begin to understand the sacred part of you with those energies, that sacred part of you can begin to take care of the wounded parts of you, and you're able to show up very differently, because then you're also not relying on people externally to look after those wounded parts of you. You can start to take care of those parts yourself. And it doesn't mean to say that you become hyper compulsive around self-reliance, that you don't allow people in to care for you. Yes, you can allow other people to care for you, but primarily the priority is that you must first learn how to care for yourself, so that you're not always externalizing your worth. If you're always looking to other people to validate you, then you're not going to feel worthy, because you're always externalizing. You're always looking to everybody else, externalizing to validate who you are. You first have to know who you are yourself. You have to be in touch with that. You have to know that you're sacred. You have to understand that sacred part of yourself and honor that part of yourself before you can ask anybody to step into relationship with you, whether it's work or whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be romantic, but if you want somebody to step into any type of relationship with you, you've got to first be able to honor and understand that you first and foremost are a sacred being. And you have to have a relationship with that sacred part of yourself, so that you can show up in the relationship, whatever the capacity, you can show up in a different way. You've got to be able to show up in a different way. And the other thing as well is about, when we're dealing with these wounded parts of ourselves, we're dealing with these tender parts of ourselves, we need to take our time. We need to take our time and learn how to be patient. Again, this comes from the mother energy, the feminine energy. It's really taking your time to really get to know those parts. A lot of us, sometimes we love too much. I want microwave therapy. I want to do it quick. It doesn't work like that. And I tell my clients that as well. This is not, there is no such thing as microwave healing. Okay, microwave healing is not going to work. You need to take your time. And if you got to remember as well that some of us have been we've been hurt and holding the hurt for a long time. Okay, we've been hurt and we've been holding on to the hurt. We've been storing the hurt, the vulnerability, the pain for a long time, and we've created survival patterns and behaviors to help us deal with that hurt. So we're talking about decades. For a lot of us, we're talking about decades of hurt. It ain't gonna go away. You're not gonna unpack all of that overnight. I've been in therapy for pretty much about 13 years. I've been in therapy for years. And I've had the odd summer off here and there as well, and done, had a few months off here and there but pretty much I've been pretty consistent with being in therapy. And if I'm not actually, specifically sitting down with a therapist, I'm still doing recovery meetings. I have a sponsor, and I'm still doing, healing work. And even now, after all of this time, sometimes there's stuff that pops up that I've hidden, that I've packed away. I've hidden it because I wasn't ready to deal with it. I didn't have the bandwidth to kind of look at certain things. Because not only am I unpacking stuff that's happened in my lifetime, I'm also having to unpack stuff that I inherited that I didn't experience. There's stuff that I've inherited from my family, okay, that weren't nothing to do with me. And these are the types of things that I have to unpack, that I'm unpacking in therapy, because it's become part of my patterns that I don't really understand. But I have to take my time and do it, because this is tender work. This is tender work, and this is, we have to give ourselves permission to slow down and to be really kind to ourselves. A lot of us were raised in homes that weren't compassionate, that weren't kind, that weren't loving, that weren't patient. It was quick, hurry up, get on with it, come on, we haven't got time, quick. Or we would get in trouble if we didn't do things at a certain time. And quite often, we had mothers that were busy, that had children, that had to get on with stuff. And society, not even just in the family, but society is very much there's a microwave, hurry up, get it done, urgency type of energy. So we internalize that, and we think we have to run up and down and do all this stuff as well. And it's making us ill. It's making us ill. And you can't operate from your highest self, from your sacred self, if you're operating in that sort of energy. But you have to give yourself permission to slow down, to pause, so that you can really understand all of that stuff going on. There's like a dual process that happens. And I noticed that there's the part of me that's kind of in the insanity, whether it's the busyness or the overworking or the urgency and all of that. And I can still sometimes slip into that stuff as well. But the difference is I now have an awareness, because there's the insanity that's happening on one part, but on the other part is that I actually can observe myself doing it. And that's when I can give myself permission to pause. And I pause through having a ritual that I do every day, through meditation, through journaling, through napping, through just having silent time. These are all different ways that I can tap into my higher self and go, actually, what's going on here? Have I got myself caught up in the madness? Am I caught up in the madness, or am I really taking care of myself? And in those moments of solitude, in those moments of silence, in those moments of pausing, or writing, journaling, whatever I'm doing, I can check in with myself and go, actually, what is actually going on here? And I don't have to beat myself up or judge myself for slipping into those behaviors. Sometimes that I can slip into those behaviors if I'm tired. I get tired, and so maybe my sacred self is not driving the bus. So what happens is, the workaholic steps in and goes, you know what? She's tired. Let's speed things up. Let's get on with it, because you need to keep going. You need to do this. You need to do that. But because I understand, and I regularly check in with all of the different parts of myself, like what parts are with me today in the moment. That's how I do it. I just get quiet. And I go, okay, what parts are with me at the moment? And it might be a younger part of me. It might be the entrepreneur. It might be the workaholic. It might be the overeater. It might be the people pleaser. It might be the superhero. It might be the racist. There's so many different parts. And it's for you to really think about, okay, the list that I've told you is not exhaustive. Everybody's going to have different parts of themselves. Everybody's going to have different parts of themselves, but you have to learn. You have to learn and get to know the different parts and understand how they interact with each other. Sometimes my inner parts fight. I know that sounds really weird, but sometimes my inner parts fight. Sometimes the workaholic will want to fight with my sacred self. My sacred self wants me to rest and go and have a nap and take my time and take things out of my calendar so that I can pace myself nice and gently. But when I do that, oh, hi Beverly, thanks for joining. When my sacred self wants to do that, my workaholic will go, stop the foolishness, get on with it, put that back in your calendar. You got such and such you need to do. If you don't do it, you're going to be homeless. If you don't do it, this is going to happen. If you don't do it, and my workaholic will start catastrophizing. My workaholic will start catastrophizing about what's going to happen if I don't do this and I don't do that. But the beauty of all of this is that I can observe those parts of myself and understand that the workaholic is driven by internalized capitalism. That's an external thing. It's driven by internalized capitalism. There's probably some childhood stuff in there as well. But it's giving myself permission to take my time and to pause and to reflect and really think about what's going on for me, and in creating a ritual every day where I give myself permission to think and pause, then this stuff, it doesn't all get backed up. I don't end up, in a highly stressed situation because I haven't given myself. You have to do this. You have to have a ritual. You have to have these sacred rituals every day. Just giving yourself time to pause, and it doesn't have to. You just keep it simple. You can be doing it when you're washing up. It doesn't have to be no big thing. You can do what you can pause and reflect on your day when you're washing up. You can just be mindful when you're washing up, or mindful when you're in the shower, or mindful when you're, when you're cleaning, or whatever it is that you'll do. Just allow yourself just to have more presence when you're doing certain things, and it makes such a difference. Because you can just ask yourself those questions about what's happening for you, and you change the relationship that you have with yourself rather than reacting to things. You then become responsive to things rather than reacting, because you've given yourself time. You're giving yourself time. And that is what self-love looks like in practice. Okay? This is what self-love looks like in practice. It's giving yourself permission to slow down. It's giving yourself permission to reflect on things and question, what do I need today? Yeah, you'd be surprised how many times I've heard from clients when I say to them, what do you need? And a lot of them don't know, because nobody's ever asked them before. They've never actually been in a situation where somebody said to them, what do you actually need? They're so used to people being controlled by other people, or being in environments where it's been unsafe. Or other people, they've been with caregivers or friends or family members that are so wrapped up in their own pain and their own stuff that there's just no space for them to ask the question, what's happening with you? What do you need in this situation? So we have to first start asking that question of ourselves. For you to be your best self, you have to first start asking that question of yourself. What do I need? Because you can't tell somebody else what you need if you don't know yourself. And that's why so many of us end up in relationships that end up people pleasing and end up codependent and all of that. Because we're so used to, we don't know how to ask ourselves what we need. We don't know what we need. So we end up always thinking about, okay, well, maybe I'll just do for other people. Because that's how you connect. That's how you've learned how to connect, by doing for others and not asking for yourself. Then we end up burnt out and resentful. We end up burnt out and resentful because we don't know how to ask for ourselves. So we end up in situations with others where we know how to give, but we don't know how to receive. And I remember Ian Van Sant saying something about when we don't, if we allow others to just keep taking from us. And I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember the exact words that she said, but basically she was saying that when you just allow others to keep taking from you and you're not filling your own cup, you make the other person a thief. I love that phrase. You make the other person a thief. Yeah, because you're not taking care of yourself. You're not taking care of your own needs. You're not being kind to yourself. You're not nurturing yourself. You're always looking to others. And that comes from a very childlike place as well. You know, that when that often happens, it often means that your needs weren't met in childhood. Your needs weren't met in childhood, and you don't know how to ask for your needs to get met. So you're an adult, but your emotional maturity around caring for yourself, you know, you're still stuck in that childlike place because you weren't cared for and you weren't nurtured. So you're disconnected from your sacred self. You're disconnected from your inner mother. You're disconnected from your inner father because you're still looking externally for somebody else to be the father for you, if that makes sense. You know, so someone else saying, that's it, to being mindful, be mindfully present and take care of our needs. That's the only way that we're going to learn how to take care of ourselves, is by being more mindful. You know, sometimes I think it's so easy for us to complicate things, you know, or we get overwhelmed. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that I need to do. There's so much stuff that I need to work through in therapy. There's so many issues that we have. There's so much stuff that our parents did to us that we have all of these things, and we end up overwhelmed. We end up overwhelmed because we don't know where to start. We don't know where to start. And I would say to you that sometimes we just need to start with asking yourself every day, like, what do you need? What do you need? Not what can somebody else do for you. Instead of externalizing it, this is where we start. Instead of externalizing it and thinking about what other people have done to us, you have to start with, okay, what can I do for myself today? How can I care for myself today? What does that look like? How can I be compassionate to myself today? What does that look like? What is one small thing that I can do for myself? And start creating a list. Be intentional about writing down the things that you're doing right now in this moment. What are the tools do you have that are nurturing? What are the things that you're doing right now that feel nice? And it might be something really simple as having a favorite cup to drink your herbal tea out of. It might be, you know, that you like to spend 5 minutes longer in the shower. So you're not just cleaning your body, but it also becomes a spiritual thing. It becomes a nourishing thing because, you know, water is very healing. It's about keeping it simple. Being your highest self is not necessarily about, you know, being on some big platform and being some big guru. And sometimes we can trick ourselves into thinking that you're not living your best highest self if you're not doing those things. And I'm here to remind you that sipping a cup of tea in your favorite mug is just as sacred. It's just as sacred. You know, that is just as loving and an act of service to yourself as the person that is on a podium doing public speaking or whatever it is. So Kisani is saying, I have a favorite cup and spoon. Be intentional about yes, be intentional about having the favorite cup and spoon, and make it a ritual. Make it a ritual that when you have that cup and spoon, and be mindful when you're drinking your tea out of that cup and spoon, with that cup and spoon. That's an act of self-love. It doesn't have to be a big gesture. Oh yeah, I'm going to the spa, I'm going on retreat. It doesn't have to be those big things. It doesn't have to be those big things. It can be the small things that we do on a daily basis. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. And those are the things that are gonna help you drop into your sacred self. Those are the things that are going to help you reconnect with your sacred self. It's not, your sacred self is not somebody in the future. Your sacred self is the person sitting down, drinking that tea with the favorite cup and spoon. That's your sacred self. You just have to remind yourself that's where it is. It's not something. It's not your future self. It's your today self. Okay. The last thing that I'm going to share with you about being your best self or being your sacred self is invest. Okay. Invest in yourself. And when I talk about investing, I'm not just talking about money, I'm talking about time. A lot of us might spend money on different things, but we don't spend enough time investing in ourselves. A lot of us will spend money on nice clothes or whatever, and yes, it might be nice to wear nice clothes and whatever, but have you taken that time to pause and sip your tea? Have you blocked out time on your calendar so you can have your lunch without rushing and thinking, oh, I've got this, that, and the other to do. I'm gonna have you actually given yourself permission to sit down and do those things in a mindful way, giving yourself the time? Time is also currency. When we talk about investing, it's easy for people to default to, okay, well, we're talking about money. Yes, money is part of it, but it's not the only part of it. The most valuable thing that you can actually give yourself is time. Not everybody can afford to go to therapy. Not everybody can afford to do, the big courses. Not everybody can afford to go on retreat. Go abroad and go on retreat. Not everybody can afford to do all those things. But everybody can make time for themselves to be kind on a daily basis. Everybody can give themselves half an hour to sit with their favourite mug. To sit with a fluffy blanket. To go for a walk out in nature. It's about keeping things really, really, really simple and investing time, to do these simple things. I think sometimes they're underestimated. Going for a walk in nature is one of the most powerful things that you can do for depression, for your sense of well-being. Is go and walk out. Go and walk in the park. Go and walk in the park for 10 minutes and come back. And don't do it in the sense that, I'm going for a walk now and I'm gonna hurry up so that I can be back at home. No, just take your time. And take in what you're walking down the road. Take in the energy from the trees. Take some deep breaths so you can reconnect with your body. Look up at the sky. If it's raining, it's okay. Allow yourself to feel the water. Feel the water against your body. Reconnect to your body. Get present to what's happening in your body. If your body could speak, what would it say? If your body could speak, what would it say? So I really want you to think about the investment part, because this part it's a lot less complicated. You can make it a lot less complicated than what we're making it. Okay? So yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you today about being your best self. I really hope that you found it useful. So I'll just quickly go over the things that I've shared today. So raise your standards. Okay? Share from your heart. Take actions in alignment from your sacred self, not your wounded self. Take your time. Love every part of you. Mother the wounded parts. Okay? Mother the wounded parts. Love every part of you. And the last one is invest in yourself. Invest time and money. Okay? If you resonated with anything that I've shared today, and maybe you're struggling with some of these things and you're looking for a therapist, you're looking for support, you want to be able to understand how to care for yourself in a way that feels kind, so that you can stop being maybe you're being mean to yourself. Maybe you're used to that and you don't know how to be kinder to yourself. I do have some slots available. You can click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. If you want to, if you would rather work in a group rather than individual one-on-one, I do have a course that's coming out in January, a coaching program that's coming out in January, that is like an introduction to self-care. So if you sign up to my mailing list, you get notified when that comes up. If you're interested in joining me for the business school and the next module that's coming up around money moves and money trauma and all of that kind of stuff, we're going to be exploring how all of your self-care is an important part of how you earn money, how you make money, how you attract money through through your energy, through how you take care of yourself. All of that is a really important part of it as well. It's not just all the practical things that you're going to be doing. So click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've got any questions about anything that I've shared today, and you can either send me a DM or you can email me at info@yardofgreatness.com. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you next time. Have an amazing week, and I'll speak to you next time. You're welcome. You're so welcome. Take care. Bye.